but it is not so among you. In the name of God, creator and maker of all. Amen. I was not ordained a priest in this church until I was 45 years old. And sometimes when people hear that, they will ask me about my former career. I worked on the staff of a magazine first after college. And then for some years, most of those pre-ordination years, I worked in a public relations agency. I loved that work. And on some rare days, I miss it. Hearing this, my questioner will sometimes say, "Oh, that must come so in handy in your new work, public relations." And sometimes, admittedly, it does. When I think about the Apostle Paul, for example, I sometimes understand him as having the same skills needed to flourish as a marketing and communications director. He organized the entire Mediterranean basin into regions. He was cagey and strategic in exploiting the communications technology of his time, the commerce and communications channels of the Roman Empire. Paul was relentlessly, insufferably, some might say, on message. And for better or for worse, he can impress us now as somewhat of a control freak. Sometimes, oftentimes actually, these impulses and reflexes can lead us off the path Jesus is asking us to follow. Sometimes they don't come in handy, but need to be recognized and resisted. But it is not so among you, Jesus says to James and John and the other 10 this morning. It is not so among you. I want for the next few minutes to explore that it with you this morning. This outrageous, hilarious request from James and John, the sons of Zebedee. Give us whatever we ask you to give us. And then grant us to sit with you, one at your right hand and one at your left in glory. This request becomes a teaching moment for the one they have called teacher, an occasion for him to talk about how they are to be together, how they are to be in the world, and how we are to be together and in the world. He's inviting me personally to understand how my own impulses and reflexes, learned over years, might not come in handy, but might in fact be leading me into a kind of hell. Yesterday was a beautiful morning. And as you may know, it was the morning of the dedication in Brewster of 2 Habitat for Humanity houses, one of which we helped to finance, helped to build as volunteers, have helped to furnish with handmade quilts for each family member, carpentered bookcases for each bedroom, donated books. A number of you baked snacks for the construction teams over this past year. A number of us led worship on the mornings of building days. It was a perfect autumn day yesterday. And these 2 lovely gray shingled houses, along with the house of the Brewster woman who gave part of her land. At last I'll have neighbors, she said. Together, these 3 homes form a kind of village back in a woodsy hamlet near an old New England cemetery. It was a picture-perfect day. Habitat meets and manages such moments with wisdom, generosity, and skill. Our own parish contributions have been made in memory of Nat Goddard and Gilbert Merritt, late of this parish. Habitat veterans whose habitat work for years had been selfless, generous, skilled, and good-humored. So I took everything in on arrival in Brewster, and the former PR and events manager and me did a quick and positive assessment. Beautiful pictures of Nat and Gilbert on easels. Check. Signage thanking the many organizations, including our church, who had given to make this day and these homes a palpable witness of love. Check. A full-color leaflet thanking every single person who had built, quilted, baked, prayed, hammered, or painted. Everyone's name was spelled correctly. Check. Then I looked over at the front porch of the home we had helped to build. Heaped with gifts. There were the bookcases, donated lawn care equipment, and there, folded and stacked, were quilts made by so many of you. Grant us to sit, one at your right and one at your left, in your glory. Suddenly, something was itching me. That Zebedee DNA was coursing through me. Those beautiful quilts folded like so many moving blankets. That dreadful, aspiring, promotional, striving, controlling thing in me wanted those gorgeous pieces of work unfolded, showing forth. I somehow wanted your work, our contribution, to be on full display. We want you to do for us whatever we ask. Now, what the Zebedee brothers are asking for is glory, esteem for their merit. Some might say, ostentatious virtue. Aren't we good? Aren't we talented? They are on the way to Jerusalem with Jesus and the other 10, having witnessed the stagey splendor of the Transfiguration. They seem to be assuming their own purity, their own secure status as God's anointed. They don't yet see the whole. And Jesus is so gentle with them. It is not so among you, he says. You do not embody that grabby and self-promoting way of the wider world. Despite James and John's comical outburst, he hasn't nicknamed them the sons of thunder for nothing. He reminds them of their best, most generous selves. It is not so among you. Don't worry. I guess one of the gifts of aging is impulse control. Impulse control. Because I was able to release that Zebedee thing, to relax into the series of tributes and thanksgivings that was the point of our gathering. What saved me in the moment from my own impulses was simply looking at the shingled blue-gray walls of this new house, which is now a home for one mother and 4 children. Do you remember when dozens and dozens of those shingles came here to our parish hall for a visit? How with black Sharpies we wrote prayers and wishes for that Habitat family on them. Those shingles are now together and attached. Your words, your prayers are facing in towards the rooms which will shelter the continuing private life of this family. A family we don't really know, or frankly need to know. The flip sides of those shingle prayers are painted blue-gray and will face out. The upshot, the words are known only to you and to God. Love and care, love and care, love and care, love and care, all in a row, uncredited, at work, unseen, forever. Not a brick in the wall of anyone's reputation, not a proof point for anyone's virtue or skill, but shingle by shingle by shingle. This is how the kingdom gets built and built and built and built again. I'd like to end this morning with what we're in the process of building and rebuilding here, together. Now, fall, these pristine, clear blue months bring a lot of activity here to our church. We have 2 weeks from now our holiday bazaar. We have neighborhood tables going. This is also the beginning of stewardship season. And by now you've received a letter from me as part of a mailing that is the work of a group of parishioners working together on the sustainability of our common life. I'd like to reflect with you for a moment or two in conclusion this morning about how we together make all of our ministries possible. How together we try to make God's kingdom believable here in Orleans, in our own time. It is not so among you, says Jesus. Churches don't raise money in the style of museums or symphony orchestras or public radio stations. It is not so among us. You will not receive a coffee mug. We have some for free, for all. Your rector and stewardship committee do not receive your card and then, based on your pledge amount, assign you a place in a kind of tiered system of comparative generosity. Benefactor, patron, friend, second cousin once removed. That's about hierarchy, isn't it? That's about hierarchy. And Jesus, in addressing the 12 today, is asking them to question, to interrogate, and to reject the usual tried and true systems of human classification. It is not so among us. So here is my brief word for you. As you sit with your pledge card, as you perhaps know what's inside but haven't yet opened the envelope, there's no minimum. There's no maximum. We rejoice in every single pledge we receive because you're not compelled. It has nothing to do with your reputation. It has everything to do with a freely offered statement of love and care for this community and for the world beyond our walls. So my guidance to you is this. Reflect on what you have. Reflect on what you have been given. Reflect on what you think you can do. And pledge out of that awareness. When we all do what we can, we have everything we need. It is your witness, the act of pledging, that helps make God's kingdom real and believable. I'll never forget a meeting I had in my former position in Boston. I had been asked out to lunch by a new parishioner, a man in his early 30s. And shortly after I sat down at the table with him in the restaurant, he said, "I'm just curious. Did you look up how much I pledged before you said yes to my invitation?" I didn't quite know how to respond to him at first. I was so taken aback by the question. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, oh, he has no church in his background. What we do together, friends, is weird and countercultural. We don't charge admission. We simply welcome all. I think once I gathered my wits, I said, should I have done that? And he laughed, and we continued our conversation. Pledging is a statement. It is a statement of love. It is a statement of hope in the life of the world to come and in the life of our world to come. We have things we need to do together. We need more help here. You can be part of that. And every single contribution, love and care, love and care, love and care, love and care, is a sign not only of your love, but of our common hope. Things can be better than they are. Thanks be to you, and thanks be to God. Amen.